I never thought that I would become one of those who my own family uses as an ATM, but looking back, that's exactly what happened to me, as if an invisible thin thread stretched from my hands to their greedy, ever-in-need fingers, wrapping my soul tighter and tighter until I unknowingly found myself trapped in my own good intentions and the naive faith in gratitude. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy watching. My name is Sylvia. I am 34 years old, and until recently, I proudly held the title of Key Account Manager at the sports nutrition company, which produced and distributed products for those who aspired to strength, health, and an ideal body, and I, in turn, built strong, almost friendly relationships with our largest partners, keeping them from leaving the competition with attention, professionalism, and endless patience. My boss, Leon, the CEO, and a man of rare charisma, always appreciated my efforts, did not skimp on praise, and paid me accordingly, and therefore I did not consider myself deprived of someone in this life. On the contrary, I considered myself lucky to have managed to escape from the gray provincial obscurity into a world where work and talent is rewarded with dignity. 5 years ago, on a dreary autumn evening, when I had just returned home, tired but pleased with the meeting, I received a call from my mother. There was such alarm in her voice that I barely had time to kick off my shoes and rush to the phone. She said that her father was going to have a serious back operation, that insurance only covered part of the costs, and debts were already beginning to choke their house, slowly but surely, like water seeping into cracks. Of course, I helped. How could I have done otherwise? They were my parents, the people who gave me life, who believed in me when the rest of the world seemed cold and indifferent. I had money, and they needed it, it would seem. Isn't that how it should be? Sylvia, I did not know what we would do without you, my mother cried into the phone when I transferred the money to their account, and I, holding the phone to my ear, smiled softly through tears, feeling a warm wave of love and pride in my chest. But it didn't end there, as I naively believed at the time. A few months later, my parents turned to me for help again, this time with the mortgage, then with the utilities, then with the repair of my father's old car, which always broke down at the most inopportune moment. Dad assured me that all this was temporary, that they would pay off soon and get back on their feet, and I believed him, as I had always believed since childhood, unconditionally, with the blind confidence that I had for my family, despite all the disappointments of adult life. And then Alma, my younger sister, joined in, the mother of 2 mischievous boys, always in a hurry and always tired, as if life was chasing her from behind with an invisible whip. First, she asked for money for urgent car repairs. The salary was delayed, they said. The children had to be taken to school. They couldn't cope without a car, and of course I helped without hesitation, because for me it was nothing, but for her it was a necessity. Then there was a request to pay for Tyler's classes at the hockey club, then to help with the rent of an apartment, because the expenses again exceeded the income, and each time Alma looked at me with such gratitude, with such sincere need in her eyes, that I felt like a savior, a person who was doing something really important. "You are literally saving us," she said, squeezing my hands, and I, earning a 6-figure sum, enjoyed the fact that I could help them without depriving myself of anything essential, without denying myself trips, small joys, new shoes, or sudden weekends in sunny cities. Sometimes I took my parents or Elma and her family on vacation, paid all the bills, chose cozy houses by the sea or spacious rooms in hotels with mountain views, and these vacations, full of laughter, delicious food, and long walks, became one of my fondest memories. Last Christmas, the whole family went to Florida, rented a large bright house near the beach. I paid for the flight, accommodation, and a fancy dinner on the eve of the holiday in a restaurant with white tablecloths and live music. When my mother raised a glass of champagne and, smiling through tears, said, "Sylvia is the most generous daughter you can ever dream of," I felt my heart fill with warmth, as if the whole world was arranged correctly, fairly, and I finally found my place in it. We all clinked glasses, and I looked at the faces of my family and thought that maybe this was real happiness. But barely a month later, everything changed. I was at work when Leon, with an unusually gloomy face, called me into his office, and, sitting me down opposite, said quietly, "Sylvia, I need to tell you something important before you hear it from someone else." He said that his father, the main owner of the company, decided to remove him from the post of CEO, handing over the management to his youngest son Giovanni, a man who never hid his dislike for me and the money I was paid. My stomach clenched into a tight ache. Leon was not just my boss, he was my ally, a man who believed in me, supported me, and gave me the opportunity to grow. "What does this mean to me?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. Leon sighed heavily. "I do not know," he answered honestly. "But Giovanni always thought you were overpaid." The shareholders' meeting was held 2 days later. Leon did not appear there, but Giovanni sat in the presidium, smug, confident in his power. The very next day, I was called to the office of the new CEO. Giovanni, without even offering me a seat, said coldly, "Sylvia, I will speak plainly. I'll bring my team. You're fired in 2 weeks from today." I kept my dignity. I thanked him for the notification and left, feeling like the world around me was bursting at the seams, like the pillars of my usual life were crumbling. So far, I wasn't particularly worried about money. I had enough savings to live without work for a year or more, but I knew one thing for sure: I would no longer be able to support my family the way I used to. And with that knowledge, hard and bitter, I got in the car and drove to my parents'. It was Wednesday evening, the day when Alma and her family always came for dinner. I didn't call in advance. I wanted to see their real reaction, without masks, without time to prepare. When I entered, the smell of fried meat and fresh bread enveloped me in a warm cloud, and all the faces at the table looked up at me in surprise. "Sylvia, what are you doing here?" Mom asked, frowning slightly. "Shouldn't you be at work?" I took a deep breath, sat down on an empty chair, and stared straight ahead. I was fired. There was a deathly silence. Mom and Dad exchanged glances with Alma and Parade, short, silent, as if this silence contained the entire answer to my news, and I, sitting at the table, felt the thick, sticky air of the room becoming heavier, pressing on my chest, paralyzing my vocal cords. No one seemed to say a word, but at the same time it seemed that a whole storm swept through their gazes and shrugged their shoulders, as if every heart here had instantly made a decision that did not need to be discussed, and I, alone in the midst of this conspiracy, felt superfluous at my own celebration of life. It seemed like an eternity. The seconds dragged by like molten wax, slowly and painfully, until finally the mother spoke. Her voice was flat, almost indifferent, as if it were not about her daughter. "Oh, Sylvia, this is terrible news. We were counting on your help with the property tax next month," she said casually, as if it were a matter of course, as if my duty was to be an eternal lifesaver, an inexhaustible source of financial support. "No, I'm sorry, no," that's all I could squeeze out in response, trying to hold back the wave of pain and disappointment that was rolling over me. "You're fine, I'm fine." But that's exactly what they were counting on. That's exactly what they saw my role in their lives. And now that I will no longer be able to help as before, I had to say it out loud, firmly and definitively. I need to be careful with money until I find a new job. Alma's face darkened, as if I had personally offended her. Her eyebrows drew together. Her lips pursed into a thin line, and, without hiding her indignation, she asked her question, which was resentful. "What about Tyler's hockey?" "The car needs new brakes. You said you'd pay for them." I stared at her, stunned by her tone, her insistence, her utter inability to see beyond my news to anything more than the collapse of her own hopes for my help. "Alma," I gasped, "I just lost my job, I can't." But instead of sympathy or at least understanding, I received a sharpness in response. "This is so inconsiderate," she said abruptly, standing up, her movements jerky, full of resentment and indignation, and I saw how Parade, her husband, began to gather the children, casting short, gloomy glances at me. Alma grabbed her purse with such fury, as if all her unspent anger was hidden in it, and they left without saying goodbye, leaving behind only a slammed door and a heavy residue in the shower. I turned to my parents, still hoping for support or at least understanding, but my mother just rubbed her temples, as if my trouble was just another headache in her life, and without saying another word, She got up and left the room, leaving me with my father, who was sitting at the table and studying as he took his plate, avoiding my gaze. "How long will it take until you find another good job?" "What is it?" he finally asked, without looking up, and his voice sounded as if we were discussing not my dismissal, but the delivery time of some long, paid parcel. "I do not know," I answered honestly, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "Maybe 6 months. It's hard to find something on the same level." He silently pushed back his chair, stood up, and without even looking at me, said, "Mom and I need to talk. Come out and leave." I sat alone at the table, sat there for 5 minutes, stunned by what had just happened, feeling how the last pillars of my faith in my family were crumbling, how the image of my relatives, whom I had supported for so many years without questions, without conditions, was collapsing. Then I got up, as if in a daze, and drove home in silence, in complete, viscous silence, trying to realize that my family cares more about my wallet than about my well-being. 3 weeks have passed since that terrible dinner, 3 long weeks, during which I made a decision. I turned off all automatic transfers to my parents' and Alma's accounts, ending this endless river of money, and sent them all a simple, short message. "Due to my current financial situation, I can no longer provide financial support. I wish you all the best." Maybe those words sounded cold, maybe they didn't have the same warmth, but it still hurt. It hurt so much that I wanted to howl into my pillow at night, like a dog abandoned on a deserted street. No one answered, not one of them, not a single text, not a single call. Before I lost my job, my phone was buzzing with constant requests. Mom asked if I could help pay for the unexpectedly high electricity bill. Dad asked to pay for the renewal of membership in the golf club, as if it were as a matter of the utmost importance. Alma sent me links to toys, clothes, and workouts for children, accompanied by messages like, "Tyler would love this for his birthday if his amazing aunt wanted to pamper him." There was a radio silence, an emptiness in which, for the first time in a long time, I could hear my own thoughts, my own desires. I tried to look at things from the other side. For the first time in many years, I had nothing but free time, no stressful meetings with clients, no late-night letters, no urgent tasks, and, what was more surprising most of all, no endless financial requests that always required an immediate solution. Just me. I'm just figuring out what I want out of life. I made a spreadsheet budget in which I carefully calculated how long my savings could last without supporting 3 more households, and it turned out that my money could last much longer than I thought if I spent it only on myself. I could afford to take a little break before diving back into another stressful job. My apartment, which had seemed too cramped and too busy to me before, now looked too quiet, without the constant ringing of notifications, without plaintive voices on the phone. Sometimes it seemed strange to me that no one demanded my attention every minute, but I forced myself to enjoy this peace, stretched out in a chair on the balcony, sipped coffee and, watching the sunrise, I told myself, this is what normal people feel, this is what it means when you're not the solution to all other people's problems. As the days went by, I began to wonder, would someone call just to find out how I was, just because they missed me? They didn't call. Thanksgiving was approaching, and I realized that over the past 5 years I had never heard a word about plans without my active participation, because I always hosted guests at my place or brought most of the food to my parents' house. Last year, I spent over $300 on groceries and spent 2 days cooking to make everything perfect. While everyone else was helping, drinking wine, and interfering with me, making a fuss around the kitchen, laughing and talking as if it were their contribution to the common cause, I, immersed in endless cooking and chores, felt the growing weight of loneliness in this endless pressure of expectations. But a week before the new Thanksgiving Day, she broke down, allowing herself to show weakness, and called her mother, hoping that perhaps during this time the resentment had subsided. That maybe there was room for understanding in her heart. She didn't answer the first time, the second, the third, or the fourth, and it wasn't until the 5th attempt, when I was about to hang up, that I heard an irritated voice. "What, Sylvia?" Her tone was so cold, so alien, that for a moment I was speechless. "Hi, Mom," I began, trying to sound cheerful, forcing artificial lightness into my voice. "I just wanted to know about plans for Thanksgiving." Should I make my usual cranberry sauce and sweet potato casserole? There was a long pause, thick, unpleasant, oppressive, and finally my mother spoke, her voice flat and lifeless, as if she were reading an official document. We decided to do everything differently this year, she said, and I immediately felt a sense of foreboding growing in my chest. Your father Alma and I have been discussing this. We think it would be better if you didn't join us this year. My heart stopped for a moment, as if it had caught on a sharp ledge, and I barely exhaled. Why? Mom sighed, as if I was a dumb kid who couldn't understand simple things, and said, we don't need losers at our holiday table. People without jobs or anything to contribute. The word losers hit me like a slap in the face, turning all the inner pain outward, and I sat stunned by how easily, how matter-of-factly my own mother crossed me out. So when I was paying for everything, you were glad to see me around, I said in a trembling voice, trying to keep from crying, but now that I can't finance everyone, am I no longer welcome? She didn't even try to deny it, didn't even give a single excuse, didn't even try to smooth over the sharpness of her words. You won't be welcome in our house. Don't come, she replied before hanging up the phone. I sat down on my couch, still holding my phone in my hand, as if it were the only anchor left in my life, completely stunned, feeling hot tears rolling down my cheeks by themselves, while reality, with all its ruthlessness and bitterness, slowly but inexorably crashed down on me. They never loved me, I whispered into the emptiness of my apartment. They loved only what I could do for them: money, gifts, paid vacations, closed debts, eternal willingness to help. All those smiles, grateful hugs, toasts for my generosity were just a fake performance, carefully staged so that the flow of money would never run out, and when the source ran out, all the manifestations of love went with it. I cried until my eyes lit up with pain, and my throat hurt from sobbing, until real, hot anger flared up in my heart instead of pain. To hell with them, I said aloud, peering at the ceiling of my empty apartment, my voice sounding hoarse and strained. To hell with all of them. In this burst of determination, I grabbed my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a vacation just for myself, not for my parents, not for Elma and her family, just for myself, choosing a 5-star Mexican resort with a luxury suite on the shores of the Azure Sea. It cost a fortune. Every click on the booking site seemed to ring in my ears with the amount of dollars spent, but I didn't care, because I finally realized that I had spent the last 5 years of my life financing other people's happiness, postponing my own for later, for an indefinite future that never came. Not anymore. When I clicked on the booking confirmation button and received an e-ticket to a new life by email, the phone rang. I almost ignored him, thinking it might be Mom or Alma, ready to shower me with reproaches and demands again. But when I looked at the screen, I saw a name I hadn't expected: Leon, my former boss, a man who always believed in me. Sylvia, he said when I answered, his voice warm and strangely reassuring. How are you holding up? It got better, I admitted, and couldn't resist adding with a bitter smile, your brother is such a charmer. Leon laughed, his laughter sounding sincere. Yes, he was always a joy. He paused briefly and then continued, listen, I'm calling because I have some news. I started my own company, Sportmax Nutrition, a direct competitor to my father's business. Well done, I said sincerely, happy for him, because Leon was really smart, honest, and deserved much more than the family business could give him. I want you to join me, he continued, as CEO. I almost dropped my phone in surprise. General Manager. Leon, I began, but he interrupted. That's exactly what you deserve. You know this industry inside and out, customers trust you, and I trust you completely. Say yes. My mind raced through a whirlwind of thoughts: CEO, higher salary than I've ever had, real power to make decisions, influence business, build a company on my own terms. When do you need me to start? I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. As soon as possible, he replied, but I hastily interjected, but I'm going to Mexico for a week for Thanksgiving. I need this vacation. I'll start when I get back. Leon laughed, his voice sounding light. Perfect. Take your time, you deserve it. We'll celebrate your new position when you get back." After we hung up, I couldn't stop smiling at the strange feeling that slowly but surely filled me from the inside, because going from a fired employee to CEO in less than a month was something completely incredible, almost fabulous, and I realized that life really knows how to be funny, throwing up unexpected turns just when it seems that all is lost. Thanksgiving came, the very day that in recent years has always been associated with tedious preparations, endless requests, hidden reproaches, and the feeling that I had to save someone again. But this time it was different. I boarded my flight to Cancun, feeling at the moment of takeoff, as along with the heavy metal of the air car, my soul rises, becoming lighter than in all these long, exhausted years. Because now there were no family dramas, no tearful calls, no to-do lists in the kitchen for ungrateful people. Just me, the beach, and the new start that was already waiting for me. When I returned, when my bare feet touched the soft sand for the first time, and the sea breeze lifted the weight from my shoulders, I checked into my hotel, chose a spacious room with a view of the endless ocean, changed into a light sundress and ordered a bottle of champagne, because I knew that this moment deserves to be celebrated with the sparkle and fizz of sparkling wine, as a sign of a new life that has begun here and now. When the champagne arrived, I took a selfie with a bottle in my hand. In the background through the huge window I could see the sparkling ocean undulating under the gentle sun, and without hesitation, I posted this photo on Instagram with the caption, "I celebrate my new position as CEO of Sportmax Nutrition," knowing full well that Alma is still she subscribed to my page and that she would see it, knowing that the whole family would sooner or later find out about my new beginning, about my victory, that I was no longer their ATM, but an independent, strong woman standing on top of her own destiny. I took a sip of champagne, smiled to myself and allowed myself to really relax, enjoying this moment, this first real moment of peace in many years. But exactly 2 hours after posting the photo, my phone started literally exploding with calls and messages. While I was lying on the beach, feeling warm, the sun was shining on my face, and I could hear the vibration reverberating across the wooden surface of the chaise longue. The first was a sweet message from Alma, written as if there had never been any hard feelings or cold words between us. "Happy Thanksgiving, little sister. I hope you're having a great time. I miss you." And this is from the same Alma who practically spat in my face a few weeks ago when I told her that I could no longer pay for her children's hockey training, from the same Alma who approved of my expulsion from the family dinner because I could no longer bring money to their house. I ignored the message, not wanting to plunge back into that sticky web of their feigned concern, but the phone continued to vibrate, and now it was Mom, Dad, Alma, Mom again, and Parade, which was especially strange because Parade had never called me himself before, much less tried to contact such a person. Perseverance. After about 10 missed calls, I finally picked up the phone, and when my mom called for the 5th time, her voice on the other end was sickly sweet, so fake that I wanted to hang up right away. "Sylvia, sweetheart," she began, "we've been trying to get in touch with you." "I noticed," I replied dryly, looking at the incoming waves, allowing myself to feel a slight mockery. "We were just talking about how much we miss you," Mom continued in the same sticky voice. "When you get back from your trip, you should come to dinner. We'll be glad to see you." I sat down on a chaise longue, feeling a tired anger rise in me, the same one that had been accumulating for years. "Interestingly," I said slowly, "Mom, a week ago you said that I was not welcome in your house because I was a loser without a job." "Oh, darling, you misunderstood," she said hurriedly, stumbling over every word. "We were just upset. You know how it is with your father. We didn't mean anything by it." I understood them perfectly then, and I understood them even more clearly now. "What has changed?" I asked, keeping my voice level and calm. Maybe I suddenly became employed again? Or, more precisely, did I suddenly become a CEO with a big salary again? There was a pause, heavy and treacherous, and then I heard a rustle as someone snatched the phone from my mother. "Sylvia, this is Alma." My sister's voice was strained to the point of cloying tenderness. "Don't listen to Mom. She's terribly apologetic. Look, we all overreacted. We're a family, and families sometimes fight, right? But we are so happy about your new job. Congratulations." I laughed out loud, so loudly that the couple on the nearby chaise longue looked back at me in surprise. "Thank you, Alma," I said. "I'm interested, but what exactly makes you happy?" "That I got a great job, or that you think the money train is about to start running again?" "Sylvia, this is unfair," she said, but her voice faltered, betraying what she didn't dare say out loud. "I mean, we hope you can help us again. The apartment needs urgent repairs, and Parade has a dental problem that the insurance doesn't fully cover." And here it is, the truth, simple, sickeningly cynical. "Let me be very clear," I said slowly and clearly, trying not to lose a single word in the sound of the waves. "I will never, and I mean never, give any of you another cent. Not for repairs. Not for dental services. Not for mortgages, not for hockey clubs, not for vacations, and not for anything else. This part of our relationship is over." I heard gasps, and then screams as the phone seemed to be being passed around, and into this cacophonous whirlwind of voices intertwined the furious screams of my father, who screamed about my ingratitude, about how, in his opinion, I turned away from my family after all they had done for me, then my mother's voice, turning into plaintive sobs as she lamented how they had raised such a selfish daughter who, having barely achieved success, chose to forget about her roots, and then Alma's screams, filled with despair and reproaches that now her children would suffer because of me. It was as if I had personally condemned them to poverty by refusing. I silently ended the conversation, not wanting to listen to these complaints full of manipulation and reproaches anymore, turned off the phone and, feeling relief slowly flow through my veins, headed to the beach bar, where I ordered a strong margarita, allowing myself for the first time in a long time to give myself only to my desires. I walked to the water, feeling the hot sand under my bare feet, and, throwing myself into the crystal-clear turquoise surface of the ocean, plunged into it with my head, feeling how the waves washed away the burden of past resentments, guilt, and fatigue from me. Until the very end of my vacation, I kept my phone turned off, as if erecting an invisible wall between myself and the world that once considered me its wallet. I got a massage at the resort's luxurious spa, allowing the skilled hands of craftsmen to smooth out the tension accumulated over the years of constant worries. I swam with a mask and snorkel, watching with colorful schools of fish darting between coral reefs. I ate delicious food, tasted first-class tequila, read books by the pool, forgetting about time, and walked barefoot along the endless beach for a long time, watching how the setting sun colors the sky in fantastic shades of pink and gold. It was the best week of my life, a week of freedom, joy, and serenity that I gave to myself and only to myself, without regard to anyone else's expectations. On my last day at the resort, I finally turned on my phone, and the screen was immediately filled with notifications. There were 47 missed calls and 31 text messages, most of them from my family, and a few from Leon, who was interested in work issues. I opened one message from my mother, short and painfully familiar. "Sylvia, please call us back. We need your help. Dad's blood pressure is up due to the stress of not being able to pay the bills." Then one from Alma. "Our landlord is threatening eviction if we delay paying the rent again. Please, Sylvia, we need you. And one more thing. Parade's tooth is getting worse, and the kids keep asking why Aunt Sylvia doesn't love them anymore." I scrolled through message after message, each one more desperate, each demanding money, each reminding me of my former situation, and none of them asked how I was feeling, whether I enjoyed my vacation, whether I was happy at last. I didn't answer any of them, calmly packed my things, checked out of the resort, and flew home on the Monday after Thanksgiving, feeling strangely relieved to be able to put it all behind me. When I entered the office of Sportmax Nutrition on my first day as CEO, I immediately felt that I was on the verge of something great. Leon greeted me in the lobby with a wide, sincere smile and strong hugs full of joy and pride. He asked if I was ready to change this industry with him, and I didn't hesitate for a second. "I'm more than ready." He gave me a tour of the office, which was bright, modern, smaller than the former sports nutrition giant, but full of energy, freshness, and ambition. He introduced me to the team he had assembled. Many of these people were my former colleagues, who had also been fired by Giovanni, and their eyes shone with sincere warmth and excitement when they greeted me. My new office was spacious, with panoramic windows offering breathtaking views of the city landscape, and on my desk was a sign that read, Sylvia Mitchell, CEO, and next to it was a bottle of champagne and an ice bucket and a note from Leon, for new beginnings. I immediately got to work, knowing that we didn't have time to build up. We needed to act quickly to compete with sports nutrition, and I knew perfectly well which clients to turn to first, those who were unhappy with Giovanni's new leadership. By the end of the first day, I had already scheduled meetings with 3 key clients, confident that I could bring them to our side, and in the following weeks I completely immersed myself in creating a new company, working long hours, but for the first time in my career I felt that I was working for myself, for my future, and not for in order to support other people's dreams at your own expense. It was amazing. I changed my phone number and email address to finally break the old chains and get rid of the constant messages from my family, hoping that now I would finally find peace. But one evening, about a month after I started working at Sportmax, I was returning home after a particularly long day, full of satisfaction from my first successes, when, driving up to my house and getting out of the car, I noticed 3 figures standing at my entrance: Mom, Dad, Alma. Everything inside me tightened as if from a blow, and my first thought was to get back in the car and drive away, but they had already noticed me. Mom took a step forward, her face full of a strange mixture of determination and feigned warmth. Sylvia, finally. We've been trying to contact you for weeks. I know, I said calmly, keeping my distance. I've made it clear that I don't want to be contacted. This has gone too far, Dad said with the severity of a teacher scolding a naughty teenager, his voice stern and peremptory. Alma nodded, pursing her lips. We're a family, Sylvia. And the family should help each other. I looked at their faces, and at that moment, I saw not the same native people as I had tried to see them all these years, but just cold, alien creatures, for whom I had always been just a means to achieve my own goals, a financial crutch that they used to use without thinking about my fatigue or feelings. These people who once told me they didn't want to see a loser at their Thanksgiving table, who only remembered my existence when they thought I had money again, these faces that didn't have a drop of sincere concern or a shadow of regret for their actions. Not once in all these long weeks have they asked me how I feel, or tried to find out how I'm coping with everything that's come over me. No, I said firmly, feeling a strange, liberating determination grow inside me. This is going to end now, and my heart surprisingly didn't flinch as I continued. I don't want to see or hear from any of you anymore. If you come to my house again, I will call the police. Mom's face wrinkled into a strange, comical grimace before she began to cry, plaintively and loudly, clasping her hands in front of her, as if trying to beg my forgiveness. How can you say that to your own mother after all we've done for you? She howled, but her words did not touch my heart, which had long been petrified by their betrayal. Alma joined in the scene, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice cracking with hysteria. You're leaving us. How should we do without you? And in these words, there was not so much grief as fear, the fear of being left without the source of well-being that I had been for them for so long. Just like I did without your support when I lost my job, I replied coldly, walking past them to my house, not allowing myself to look back, not giving myself a moment of doubt. I went inside and immediately locked the door, feeling persistent stares behind me. Through the window I could see them standing in the driveway, confused and having lost their power over me forever. It's been 6 months since I stood on this very threshold and cut my family out of my life forever. 6 months of peace, 6 months of building something for myself, 6 months that have become the most important investment in my future. Sportmax flourished. We have already captured 15% of the market share that was once completely dominated by the sports nutrition company, and as it turned out, customers were much more willing to work with people who really care about their needs, rather than with the CEO, who found himself in his place due to unrelenting nepotism. Leon and I made a great team. He focused on seeing the big picture, brand development, and investor relations, while I took over the management of day-to-day operations, organizing processes, and maintaining close relationships with clients who valued sincerity and professionalism. Our staff has grown from 12 to 38 people, and last week we rented the second floor in our office building to accommodate all new employees and expanding departments. We recently learned that Giovanni, Leon's brother, was fired by their father. According to rumors, sports nutrition began to lose customers and money rapidly after he took over, which, to be honest, would have upset me if Giovanni hadn't been such an outright jerk when he fired me without the slightest respect. "You dodged a bullet," Leon told me one day at lunch, smiling his easy, good-natured smile. But I just shook my head and replied, feeling genuinely proud of myself, "I didn't dodge a bullet. I caught her and built something better out of her." Leon raised a glass to our success, and at that moment, for the first time in a long time, I felt that everything I had been through, was worth it. Last month, my cousin Emma, with whom I had never been particularly close, but who, as it turned out, followed the family dramas from the outside, called me. She told me that she had heard family rumors about what happened to my parents and Alma, and added, "I always thought they were taking advantage of you. The way they bragged about the vacations you paid, the bills you covered, I never liked." I learned from Emma that my parents were struggling with paying the mortgage, that my father had to come out of semi-retirement and work full-time again, that Alma and Parade had to move into a smaller apartment, and Tyler had to leave the hockey club because now there was no one to pay for his workouts. Of course, according to Emma, they blamed me for everything. They told everyone who was willing to listen that I had abandoned them, turned away from my family at the most difficult moment, while keeping silent about how they themselves abandoned me when I lost my job, how they called me a loser, how they didn't invite me for a family Thanksgiving dinner. I appreciated that Emma reached out to me, that she wanted to tell me the truth, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. I didn't care what they said, I didn't care if they fought, I didn't care if they hated me. For the first time in my adult life, I was free. Every dollar I earned belonged to me alone. Every decision I made was mine. Every vacation I planned was a gift to myself, and not an attempt to buy the love and recognition of those who never appreciated either my efforts or my sacrifices. Last month, I went for a weekend to a secluded spa resort in the north of the state, where there was only me, a stack of books, and absolute tranquility. I had a deep tissue massage that helped to pull out the last traces of stress from my body. I spent several hours in the sauna, letting the hot steam take away everything that was heavy and unnecessary. I slept for 10 hours straight, and when I opened my eyes in the morning, I felt more rested than in all these years of endless racing, when every minute of my existence was riddled with anxiety about other people's problems, for other people's bills, for other people's well-being, while forgetting about myself. This time, I woke up in silence, in the warm comfort of my own home, in a world where no one called me begging for money. No one sent me alarming messages about emergency situations that allegedly required my immediate financial intervention. No one made me feel guilty for daring to enjoy with my own life. I bought myself a new car, nothing fancy, just a reliable, sturdy SUV that I always wanted, but I hadn't decided to buy before, because every time an automatic calculation popped up inside, how many medical bills could I pay for Mom instead? How many months of rent for Elma to cover? How many urgent car repairs to pay for it to make their lives easier? But now I just bought it because I wanted to, because I could afford it, because it was my right to please myself. My new apartment was smaller than my previous apartment, but it was in a better neighborhood, and something about these clean, cozy streets with manicured gardens and friendly neighbors reminded me that life can be rebuilt according to my own rules. There was a small garden in the backyard, where on Sunday mornings I started growing herbs and flowers, lovingly caring for every tiny green twig, and these moments of silence, as I sat on an old wooden chair with a cup of coffee, inhaling the scent of earth and freshness, reminded me of how healing a simple skill can work. Stop and just breathe. Sometimes I wondered if I should feel guilty, because they are my family, blood, kinship, what we are taught to attach such sacred importance to. But as soon as I remembered how quickly their love evaporated when I could no longer serve them as an ATM, it was worth remembering the cold voice of my mother, who indifferently said that losers are not needed at their festive table. It was worth remembering how none of them asked if I was okay when I lost my job, as I immediately realized, it was not love, it was exploitation. Last week, I received a letter from Alma, a real paper letter, because I had long blocked them wherever I could, and when I recognized her handwriting on the envelope, I almost automatically wanted to throw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. It was 8 pages of small handwriting, full of guilt, where she described in detail how Tyler had to quit hockey and cried for several days, how her youngest son now needed braces for which they could not save up, how they owed rent again, how Parade worked 2 shifts, and Mom's health is deteriorating due to stress. At the end of the letter, Alma wrote, "We are a family, Sylvia, no matter what. Families forgive, families help each other. Please find the strength in your heart to help us." Again. But not once in all 8 pages did she apologize for the way they treated me. Not once did she admit that they contacted me only when they thought I had money again. Not once did she show a sincere interest in my life, my well-being, my happiness. I tore this letter into small pieces and threw them in the trash, feeling like with every piece of paper, the last thread of affection that once connected me to these people disappears. My therapist, yes, I finally started going to one of them, says that I am not responsible for my family's financial decisions, that they are adults who have made their choice and now have to live with its consequences, as everyone else does. She tells me over and over again, your only responsibility is yourself and your own healing, and I know she's right. I understand it with all my being, but still sometimes, in the silence of the early morning or in the solitude of the evenings, I feel the ghost of that old feeling, a sense of duty, a sense of that I should have done more, given more, sacrificed myself for them. This feeling disappears over time, becomes weaker, but still makes itself felt, like a scar on a healed wound that itches in inclement weather. Yesterday, I ran into Parade's sister at the grocery store. She looked at me coldly, lifted her chin in a contemptuous gesture, and without saying a word, turned away, taking the cart to another aisle. I had no doubt that they had told all their relatives their version of events, in which I was a heartless egotist who abandoned the poor family to the mercy of fate. Let them think what they want. The people who are really important to me know the truth. Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I had never lost that job in sports nutrition? Would I have continued to support them indefinitely, paying their bills, their whims, their endless requests, without ever seeing what they really were? Would I spend my whole life being their personal ATM, unaware that for them I am not a daughter, not a sister, but only a source of resources? I don't know. But in a strange, almost mystical way, getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It showed me the truth. It made me break free. It brought me to where I am now, successful, independent, free, and finally truly living for myself. They say that blood is thicker than water, but sometimes you can drown in blood if you allow yourself to forget that your life also matters. I decided not to drown. I chose myself. And I've never been happier. Write a comment on what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.